For years, humans had wondered if they were alone in the universe. They searched the skies, sent signals into space, and dreamed of finding other life. Then one day, the answer finally arrived. A massive alien vessel entered Earth's orbit, silent and shining like a silver moon. It did not fire weapons, did not speak in threats. It simply hovered there, waiting. Governments around the world panicked at first. People feared invasion, war, or disaster. But soon a message was translated. The alien empire was not here to attack. They wanted to start a peaceful cultural exchange, a chance for two civilizations to learn from each other. It was the kind of moment historians would talk about for generations. And because of that, Earth needed someone calm, disciplined, and steady to represent them. Among many candidates, one young human man was chosen. He wasn't loud or powerful. He wasn't famous or born into influence. What set him apart was his quiet strength. People who knew him often said he never reacted in anger, no matter how stressful things became. He believed that respect and patience could solve more problems than shouting ever could. When he received the news that he would be Earth's representative, he didn't celebrate loudly. He simply nodded, took a deep breath, and prepared himself for a moment that could change history. His family wished him luck. His mentors told him that the future of human relations rested partly on his shoulders. But he did not seem overwhelmed. Inside, he felt nervous, of course. He was still young, still learning about the world, still figuring out his own identity. Yet he knew one thing clearly: this meeting wasn't about him. It was about billions of people who hoped for peace, curiosity, and understanding instead of fear. The day of departure arrived. The alien shuttle sent to collect the human delegation landed in a wide, open space prepared especially for the occasion. Crowds gathered behind barriers, cameras rolled, and news channels around the world broadcast every second. The young man stepped forward in a simple uniform. He didn't wear medals or decorations. He wanted to look humble, respectful, and approachable. As he walked toward the shuttle, he could hear his heartbeat louder than the applause behind him. But his footsteps stayed steady. Inside the alien vessel, everything looked unfamiliar. The walls glowed with gentle light. The air felt warmer than Earth's atmosphere. Strange patterns moved along the floor like flowing streams. For a moment, he felt small like a visitor in a world far beyond anything humans had built. Still, he kept his posture calm. He reminded himself that fear could close doors, but openness could build bridges. Hours later, the shuttle arrived at the alien capital, an enormous city built across floating platforms and shining towers. The sky was filled with colors Earth had never seen. Creatures with wings soared above domed structures, and waterfalls fell from platforms suspended in mid-air, disappearing into glowing mist. Everything looked magical and advanced, like a civilization that had been growing for thousands of years longer than humanity. Waiting in the grand hall was the alien delegation. Their bodies were tall, elegant, and marked with shimmering patterns on their skin. Their eyes were bright and intelligent. Their movements were graceful, as if every gesture was practiced. Among them stood a figure slightly smaller, though still proud in stance, a 19-year-old heir to the alien throne. Young, royal, raised in luxury and confidence. The alien youth had been taught since childhood that their species was superior to all others. And because of his status, no one had ever questioned him. But the young human did not know this yet. All he saw was a room full of strangers who could become allies, friends, or teachers. He stepped forward with a polite bow. The hall fell silent. In that silence, two worlds finally met, not with violence, but with hope. The alien leaders gave a formal greeting through their translated device. Their voices echoed with authority and wisdom. They spoke of curiosity, exploration, and the possibility of learning from Earth's creativity resilience, and spirit. The young man listened carefully to every word. He felt honored. He felt responsible. He understood that every small action, every glance, every response could influence how these aliens viewed all humans. When it was his turn to speak, he kept his message simple. He thanked them for opening their doors. He said that humanity did not claim to be perfect, powerful, or superior. But humans had hearts full of determination, and they were ready to learn. He promised respect. He promised honesty. And most importantly, he promised peace. Many of the aliens nodded, impressed by his calm tone. His voice was steady, not trembling or loud. It carried sincerity instead of pride. Though the room was filled with advanced technology and powerful beings, he did not let his confidence fade. He believed that humility, not fear, was the right path. But the young alien royal, standing at the side, watched him with narrowed eyes. The royal had expected a representative who looked strong and imposing, someone who acted like a leader, worthy of standing before royalty. Instead, he saw a quiet human who looked far too ordinary. In the royal's mind, appearance equaled worth, and to him, the human seemed weak. Still, the human remained unaware of these judgmental thoughts. After the speeches, he was guided through the city. He observed every detail with fascination. He admired the alien culture, their art, their architecture, their music that echoed in strange, beautiful tones. He asked gentle questions, always careful not to offend. He listened more than he spoke. His approach made some alien advisors think highly of him. They found his calmness refreshing. They sensed a softness that was not weakness, but maturity. All the while, the young royal observed from a distance. Every polite gesture, every humble nod, every quiet smile made the royal feel confused. In the royal's world, leaders did not bow. Leaders demanded respect. Leaders raised their voices. Leaders never appeared small. The human's gentle behavior seemed completely wrong. Later that evening, a formal gathering was arranged in a massive hall that looked like a palace made of crystal. Lights sparkled like stars across the ceiling. Tables were filled with unfamiliar foods that shimmered with colors. Alien musicians played soft melodies that seemed to float in the air. It was a moment meant to celebrate unity, a peaceful first step for both civilizations. The young human entered the hall slowly. His eyes took in the beauty around him. He wasn't intimidated. He felt grateful. He felt honored to stand there as Earth's representative. He walked with quiet dignity, greeting each alien with respectful gestures. His calm presence made some guests smile. They could sense he carried no arrogance, no hostility. He didn't know that behind those shining walls, tension was quietly building. The aliens, especially the younger ones, whispered among themselves. They wondered why humans had sent someone so quiet. Why someone so young? Did Earth misunderstand the seriousness of this moment? Or did this silence hide something deeper? The young alien royal, standing near the center, felt a fire of pride and impatience burning inside. At 19, he had been raised to believe that his words carried power. He expected admiration. He expected attention. And seeing the human receiving polite nods, even admiration from some elders, made him feel overshadowed. But the human still didn't notice. He was focused on doing one thing well, representing Earth with calm respect. He believed that the first impression mattered more than anything. He believed that kindness could open doors that force never could. So he continued acting with gentle confidence, unaware that in the next moments, everything would change. This gathering was supposed to be peaceful. It was supposed to be the first step toward friendship. Yet beneath the calm surface, pride was about to clash with silence. And no one, not the alien leaders, not the advisors, not even the young human, knew that the royal's growing resentment would soon spark A moment the entire galaxy would remember. Part 1 ends at the edge of that moment. A peaceful room, a hopeful meeting, and two young figures standing on opposite sides, one humble, one proud. Neither knew that a single insult and a silent reaction would soon change the course of history. The day after the first meeting, the young human woke early, his mind still turning over everything he had seen. The alien city never slept completely, with lights, music, and strange movement continuing even in the quiet hours. Walking through the corridors of his temporary quarters, he marveled at the alien design. Every detail seemed carefully thought out. Smooth walls that felt almost alive, doors that opened as if they could read his thoughts, and soft glowing pathways that led him where he needed to go. Yet even with all the beauty and advanced technology, he focused on one thing: learning, observing, and showing respect. He had heard whispers about the young alien royal, a 19-year-old heir. People said the royal had a strong personality, and that he could be difficult. Some described him as proud, impatient, and quick to judge. But to the human, the whispers didn't matter. He believed that every being deserved a chance to show who they truly were. He decided he would remain open, calm, and thoughtful, no matter what happened. Later that morning, a formal gathering was arranged in the Royal Council's hall. It was larger than any room the human had ever seen, with ceilings high enough to be lost in clouds and floors polished like liquid glass. The air smelled faintly sweet, a scent that seemed to calm the mind, and soft humming sounds seemed to rise from the walls themselves. Delegates from both worlds took their seats. Humans were few, but the aliens were many. The young human found his place and quietly sat down, keeping his posture upright and respectful. The council began its discussion. Alien leaders spoke of trade, technology, culture, and philosophy. Every word was carefully chosen, translated in real time so the human could follow. He listened intently, asking questions in a soft, polite voice whenever it was appropriate. To many of the aliens, his quiet curiosity was strange. They were used to vigorous debate, loud voices, and dramatic gestures. But he did not raise his voice. He did not try to dominate the conversation. Instead, he focused on understanding, which some of the older aliens quietly admired. They saw patience and intelligence in someone so young, a rare combination even among their own species. But the young royal was watching from across the hall, growing more uncomfortable with every passing moment. He had been trained since childhood to expect attention, to assume authority, and to command respect automatically. When he looked at the human, all he saw was someone small, quiet, and seemingly ordinary. His pride flared, and he began to question why his elders were even taking the human seriously. In his mind, no human could match his intellect, his training, or his lineage. And yet, here the human was, moving with quiet dignity, earning small nods from some of the council members. Finally, the young royal could not contain himself. He leaned forward, speaking in a tone that was sharp, mocking, and full of superiority. His words were carefully translated, but the meaning was clear. He ridiculed the human's appearance, poked at the simplicity of Earth's technology, and made subtle jabs at the human's culture. He smirked as he spoke, expecting laughter or surprise from the crowd. To him, this was a test of dominance. He expected the human to respond, to argue, or to show some sign of weakness. Every observer waited, unsure how the human would react. The young human felt a brief flicker of heat rise in his chest, a mixture of surprise and calm anger. He could have responded, yes. He could have shouted, demanded respect, or pointed out the arrogance in the royal's words. Many humans in his position might have done exactly that, but he did not. Instead, he took a slow, steady breath. His mind focused not on anger, but on choice. He realized that responding to the insult would give power to pride, to aggression, to conflict. He also knew that silence could be stronger than words. Without a single sound, he stood. Every eye in the room turned toward him, including the young royals. The hall was silent except for the soft hum of alien technology. Then the human turned and walked toward the door. His movements were calm, purposeful, and deliberate. He did not stumble, hesitate, or glance back. Each step echoed faintly in the enormous hall, a quiet rhythm that seemed to demand attention. The aliens were stunned. Silence is not common in their culture, especially from someone insulted in front of a crowd. Some older council members shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether this human was foolish, brave, or something else entirely. The young royal's smirk faltered. He had expected anger, a shout, or at least a defensive word. Instead, he saw composure, control, and dignity in motion. For the first time, he felt uncertain. He had never seen this kind of strength before. In that moment, he realized that perhaps humans were more complex than his lessons had taught him. Outside the hall, the human paused. He allowed himself a small exhale, feeling relief that he had not given in to pride or anger. Walking through the quiet corridors of the alien building, he reflected on what had happened. Insults could wound, yes, but only if he allowed them to. Respect, patience, and calmness were far stronger weapons than any verbal argument. He believed that in the future, actions, not words, would define how humans and aliens understood each other. Meanwhile, inside the hall, the royal was left to his thoughts. He felt something unfamiliar. Doubt. Doubt about his own assumptions, his upbringing, and his understanding of strength. The council members murmured quietly, discussing the human's reaction in hushed tones. Some wondered if the young royal had underestimated humanity. Others quietly admired the human, sensing wisdom in his silence. The royal's pride, however, was wounded. He did not understand why his mockery had failed to provoke the human, and that confusion sparked a desire to learn more. He wanted to understand the human's strength, even if he could not admit it openly. For the rest of the day, the young human continued his observations. He walked through gardens that floated above the city, bridges that connected towers without visible support, and rooms where light danced like liquid. He asked questions politely, noting how the aliens responded. Some were impressed by his calm demeanor, some curious, and some cautious. But every interaction, no matter how small, was another chance to show that humanity valued understanding over conflict. Back in his quarters, he reviewed his own notes from the morning. He wrote about the alien architecture, the culture, the subtle power dynamics, and of course, the royal's behavior. He did not write out of anger. He wrote to understand, to learn, and to prepare. He knew that the young royal's pride could cause trouble later if not handled carefully. But he also believed that people, even aliens, could change. Experience, humility, and patience often revealed truths pride could not. That evening, a private message arrived from one of the elder aliens. It was an invitation to discuss culture and philosophy in a more informal setting. The human accepted. As he entered the meeting space, he found walls that shimmered gently, tables with objects designed for communication, and a small group of elders willing to share wisdom. They asked him questions about Earth's history, struggles, and resilience. He answered honestly, calmly, and with clarity. They listened, sometimes nodding, sometimes smiling, sometimes silent. They were intrigued by his perspective, impressed by his thoughtfulness, and perhaps beginning to see the potential of human civilization in a new light. Meanwhile, the young royal could not stop thinking about the human's behavior. He replayed the moment in the hall again and again, the calm stance, the quiet exit, the absence of retaliation. He wondered if he had underestimated humans all along. And though he would never admit it openly, a seed of curiosity began to grow. He wanted to learn more about this strange strength, this quiet confidence, this ability to maintain dignity under insult. For the first time in his life, he felt that his lessons about superiority might be incomplete. Perhaps strength was not always loud. Perhaps wisdom came in unexpected forms. Perhaps, just perhaps, the human held lessons he himself had never been taught. As the night deepened, both young beings reflected on the day. One, the human, remained calm and thoughtful, learning and observing with a sense of purpose. The other, the alien royal, wrestled with pride, confusion, and curiosity, forced to confront ideas he had never questioned. Though they were worlds apart, their paths had already begun to intersect in ways that neither fully understood. And as the stars above the alien city glowed faintly through the towering windows, the quiet tension of their first real confrontation lingered like the calm before a storm, or the first note of a melody yet to unfold. By the time the city's lights dimmed, signaling the end of activity for the night, the human felt ready for whatever came next. He knew there would be challenges, misunderstandings, and moments that tested patience. But he also knew that silence, respect, and calm strength could carry him further than any argument, any boast, or any insult. The next day would bring new encounters, and he would be ready not for pride, not for conflict, but for understanding. And in a distant tower, the young alien royal stared at his own reflection, questioning what he had been taught about power, superiority, and strength. He could not yet see the lessons that awaited him, but the first cracks in his certainty had begun to appear. The next morning, the human woke early again, feeling the weight of the previous day's events. The memory of the royal's insult lingered not as anger, but as a reminder that diplomacy required patience. He walked slowly through the corridors of the alien building, observing the subtle movements of the staff, the soft humming of machinery, and the way light shifted along walls that seemed to breathe. Everything was unfamiliar, yet he moved with quiet confidence, taking careful note of the culture, the hierarchy, and the subtle ways respect was shown among the aliens. Breakfast was a simple affair in the humans' quarters, yet even that was unusual. The food shimmered in soft colors, floating slightly above the plates, as if the air itself held it. The humans studied the textures, tasted carefully, and noticed how each bite revealed flavors he had never imagined. He thought about how different life was for the aliens, how different their experiences were, and how much he could learn if he stayed observant. This was not a moment for pride or argument. This was a moment to understand. Meanwhile, in another part of the palace, the young alien royal could not focus on anything. His thoughts kept drifting back to the human. He remembered the calm, quiet way the human had stood, turned, and walked out after the insult. It bothered him more than he wanted to admit. He had expected outrage, an argument, or at least a reaction that showed some human pride. Instead, he had seen composure, dignity, and though he would never say it aloud, a kind of strength that unsettled him. For the first time, he felt that perhaps there was more to humans than his lessons had taught. By mid-morning, a meeting was arranged between the human and several senior alien advisors. The room was smaller than the council hall, but filled with artifacts, paintings, and objects that seemed to communicate stories without words. The human entered and greeted everyone respectfully. He listened carefully as they asked questions about Earth, about humanity's history, about the struggles and triumphs that had shaped human civilization. He answered honestly, speaking softly but with clarity, never rushing, never raising his voice. The elders were intrigued. They had expected someone defensive, perhaps aggressive, but instead they found a calm, thoughtful observer. Every question was met with care, every curiosity handled with patience. Some of them began to nod quietly to each other. This human had qualities that were rare, not just among humans, but among any civilization. The young human did not try to impress. He did not boast. He simply spoke truthfully, and that honesty carried more weight than words of power or pride ever could. But in the shadows of the room, the young royal was watching through a small, hidden observation window. He could not help himself. He wanted to see how the human moved, how he reacted, how he carried himself when no one was looking directly at him. And every detail seemed to irritate him at first. The calm, collected nature of the human felt like a mirror, reflecting what the royal could not yet understand about himself. He had been taught that power came from dominance, from commanding attention, from showing superiority. And yet, here was a human whose silence and composure drew respect without demanding it. Unable to contain his curiosity, or his pride, he decided to approach. He found a moment when the human was alone in a corridor, observing a wall that seemed to shift and change its patterns as he moved. The royal stepped forward with a confident stride, expecting to intimidate, to provoke, or at least to assert his dominance. He spoke sharply, his voice carrying the authority of youth and status. The words were mocking, designed to test the human's reaction, to see if he would finally crack. The human turned slowly, meeting the royal's gaze without a hint of fear or anger. For a long moment, silence hung between them. The corridor seemed smaller, the air heavier. Then, without a single word, the human simply stepped aside, motioning for the royal to pass. He did not argue. He did not try to explain. He did not even react in a way that could be interpreted as weakness. His composure was absolute. The young royal stopped in his tracks. He expected confusion, fear, or outrage, but saw none. He felt something unfamiliar, respect. Not forced, not demanded, but earned in the quiet strength of a being who could stand unshaken in the face of insult. The royal's pride bristled and shifted, leaving a mixture of frustration, curiosity, and a strange desire to understand. He had been raised to believe that strength was shown with words and power. Now he faced a reality he had never considered. That silence, patience, and dignity could carry more weight than any shouted command. The human walked on, leaving the royal to his thoughts. Every step was calm, deliberate, and steady. There was no rush, no sign of impatience. It was a small act, but to the royal, it felt monumental. It revealed something he could not yet name, a lesson in restraint and confidence. For the first time, he felt that his worldview shaped by pride and hierarchy might be incomplete. The day continued with more interactions. The human visited libraries, studied alien texts, and observed educational systems that seemed to combine logic, creativity, and ethics in ways Earth had never imagined. He asked polite questions, listened carefully to answers, and compared what he learned with human knowledge. He did not boast about human achievements, nor did he belittle alien accomplishments. He treated every interaction as an opportunity to understand, to build bridges, and to show that humans could engage with respect and thoughtfulness. Observers began to notice. Some aliens whispered among themselves, discussing the human's unusual demeanor. He did not seek praise or attention, yet he commanded it in subtle ways. His patience, his focus, and his calm responses were qualities that many found rare even in their own long-lived species. The young royal watched, his mind restless, trying to reconcile what he had been taught about superiority with the quiet, undeniable presence of the human dot. By late afternoon, a demonstration was arranged. The young human would participate in a joint exercise, testing cultural understanding and problem-solving skills alongside alien youth. The activity was meant to be lighthearted, educational, and collaborative. But the royal saw it as an opportunity to assert dominance, to show the human his place. He moved confidently, subtly manipulating the rules and challenging the human at every turn. Expecting confusion or hesitation, the human responded calmly. He observed carefully, analyzed the situation, and made thoughtful decisions without complaint or showiness. When faced with challenges, he adapted. When pressured, he stayed composed. Every move reflected not arrogance or defiance, but understanding and restraint. Slowly, other participants noticed. They began to follow his lead, respecting his decisions and insights. Even some of the older, more skeptical alien advisors nodded quietly, impressed by his composure and intelligence. The young royal's frustration grew. His pride bristled against every measured action, every quiet success, every moment in which the human's patience and calm carried more weight than youthful authority. Yet beneath that frustration, a seed of admiration began to take root. He did not yet admit it, even to himself, but he felt that the human possessed a strength that his own upbringing had never taught him to value. Strength in restraint, wisdom in listening, dignity in silence. As evening approached, the human returned to his quarters, exhausted but thoughtful. He reflected on the day's events, the insult, the observation, the exercises, the subtle lessons learned in every interaction. He did not feel victorious, nor did he seek to prove anything. He simply recognized that patience, understanding, and calm strength could guide relationships across even the vastest differences in culture and species. The young royal, alone in his quarters, paced restlessly. He could not stop replaying the human's actions in his mind. Each time he did, he felt a mixture of irritation and fascination. He began to question everything he had been taught about superiority, power, and respect. For the first time, he felt curiosity about another species that was not colored by judgment or pride. He wanted to understand, not just to dominate. He wanted to see the world through the human's eyes. Though he would not admit it, that night, both young beings looked at the stars. The human reflected quietly, thinking about the vastness of the universe, the responsibility he carried as Earth's representative, and the lessons of patience and calm strength. The royal stared at the same stars, wrestling with pride, curiosity, and the unfamiliar idea that strength could take forms he had never imagined. The first real encounter of conflict, the insult, had passed. No words had been exchanged in anger. No fight had broken out. Yet in that silence, and that measured restraint, something profound had begun. A lesson was unfolding, quietly but irrevocably, that dignity, respect, and patience could shift even the strongest assumptions, and that the human's quiet strength might one day teach the young alien royal more than any lesson of power, lineage, or authority ever could. And so the story moved forward. Two young figures from different worlds, each learning in their own way, each influenced by the quiet but undeniable presence of the other. One learned patience, the other began to understand strength in silence and the galaxy, though unaware, had already begun to witness the shaping of something extraordinary. The morning light spilled softly across the alien city, painting the towering buildings in colors that seemed impossible for human eyes. The human woke early, as he always did, stretching slightly and taking a quiet moment to reflect on the events that had unfolded in the previous days. The insult, the silence, the observation of alien culture, and the subtle lessons of patience were still fresh in his mind. He understood that diplomacy was not about winning arguments or showing dominance. It was about understanding, listening, and choosing one's responses wisely. As he prepared for the day, he reviewed the notes he had been keeping. Every detail mattered: the way aliens moved in groups, the subtle gestures that indicated respect, the slight shifts in tone that carried meaning beyond words. He understood that this first encounter between two species was fragile. One wrong move, one careless word, could damage relationships that might take decades or even centuries to repair. And yet, he felt calm. He had a clear purpose, and he knew the value of measured thought and patience. Meanwhile, the young alien royal had not slept well. His mind was a storm of confusion and frustration. The memory of the human's silent response to his insult played over and over in his mind. He had expected confrontation, argument, or at least visible discomfort. Instead, the human had walked away without a sound, without a word, without even glancing back. That calmness, that quiet dignity, gnawed at him in ways he could not understand. It challenged the principles he had been taught since childhood. It forced him to question whether strength truly came from pride and loudness, or whether it could take a subtler, quieter form. The royal began to observe the human more closely, not out of malice, but out of curiosity. Every action, every word, every gesture seemed to carry meaning beyond what he had been trained to recognize. The human did not seek attention, yet he drew it naturally. He did not speak loudly, yet his words resonated. He did not demand respect, yet he earned it through patience and understanding. The royal could not dismiss it. He could not ignore the fact that the human possessed a kind of strength he had never encountered before. By mid-morning, the human was invited to participate in a cultural exchange exercise designed to test understanding, negotiation, and collaboration. The participants were a mix of human observers and alien youth. The human entered the room quietly, scanning the setup carefully. He noticed the intricate patterns on the walls, the objects that seemed to serve multiple purposes, and the subtle cues in the alien's body language. Everything was new, but he approached it with curiosity and calm observation. The exercise began. The aliens were quick, precise, and competitive. They moved with confidence, each believing their approach was superior. The human, in contrast, observed first, analyzed second, and acted last, but always deliberately. His calm, thoughtful decisions slowly began to influence the group. Alien participants found themselves pausing to consider his suggestions, questioning their own impulsive choices, and in some cases, following his lead. Without raising his voice or asserting authority, the human shaped the outcome of the exercise. That the young royal was present, of course. He initially tried to undermine the human at every step, testing him, pushing him, looking for signs of weakness. He expected hesitation, error, or frustration. But every time he challenged the human, he encountered calmness, clarity, and composure. The human adapted gracefully, solving problems with insight and patience. Every subtle gesture, every quiet decision, demonstrated a strength the royal could not anticipate. After the exercise concluded, the elders gathered to discuss what they had observed. Many spoke of the human's patience, thoughtfulness, and ability to influence without force. They were impressed, quietly admiring a behavior that was rare even among their own species. The young royal listened to their comments, a complex mix of pride, frustration, and admiration swirling inside him. He felt unsettled. His understanding of strength and superiority had been challenged in ways he could not yet articulate. The day continued with more opportunities for observation. The human visited libraries filled with texts that spanned centuries of alien thought, history, and philosophy. He studied quietly, asking questions that were respectful and insightful. He learned about the alien culture, their struggles, and their achievements. He did not compare their world to Earth in a way that diminished either side. Instead, he sought understanding, attempting to grasp the values and principles that guided an entirely different civilization. By afternoon, the human was walking through the gardens of the palace. Floating platforms held trees with glowing leaves, streams that moved as if alive, and flowers that changed colors with every passing hour. He observed not only the beauty, but also the care with which the aliens maintained their environment. It was a reflection of their values, their respect for life, and their attention to detail. He made careful notes, understanding that cultural knowledge would be essential for building trust and mutual respect. The young royal followed at a distance, still unsure of his feelings. He could not deny the human's influence, but he struggled to reconcile it with everything he had been taught. He had believed that power came from lineage, from status, and from the ability to command attention. Yet here was someone who possessed no formal authority, who relied on patience and dignity rather than force, and who had already earned respect from those around him. The royal's pride bristled, but so did his curiosity. He wanted to understand this strength, even if he could not admit it openly. As evening approached, a private meeting was arranged between the human and several senior alien advisors. The purpose was to discuss Earth's approach to diplomacy, conflict resolution, and collaboration. The human spoke calmly, explaining how humans valued dialogue, compromise, and understanding. He described how patience and empathy often led to solutions that force or aggression could never achieve. He did not boast, he did not argue, and he did not seek approval. He simply shared his perspective honestly and clearly. The advisors listened intently. Some nodded, impressed by the human's thoughtful approach. Others asked questions, testing his ideas and challenging his assumptions. The human responded with clarity and patience, never faltering, never raising his voice. He showed that strength was not always loud, that influence could be quiet, and that understanding could be more powerful than dominance. The young royal observed silently, feeling a strange mixture of frustration and admiration. He realized that he had much to learn, not only about humans, but about himself. Later that night, both young beings reflected on the day. The human considered the lessons he had learned, the subtle ways culture shapes behavior, and the importance of patience and calm strength. He knew that every small action mattered, and that the choices he made could influence not just the young royal, but the future relationship between their species. The young royal, meanwhile, could not stop thinking about the human's behavior. He replayed the exercises, the meetings, and the quiet confidence that seemed to radiate from the human without effort. He began to question the lessons of his upbringing, the assumptions of superiority, and the nature of strength itself. For the first time, he felt humility not as weakness, but as the beginning of understanding. He realized that power could take many forms, and that some forms of strength could not be measured by birthright, status, or loudness. By the time the city's lights dimmed, the human felt ready for the next day's challenges. He understood that patience, dignity, and careful observation could carry him further than confrontation or argument ever could. He had faced insult and tension with calmness, and he had influenced the aliens in ways that did not require dominance or pride. He had shown that quiet strength could earn respect without conflict. The young royal, lying awake in his chamber, felt unsettled but intrigued. He could not deny that the human had taught him something important, even if indirectly. He was beginning to understand that the universe was larger, more complex, and more nuanced than he had ever been told. He was beginning to realize that lessons in humility and understanding might be more valuable than lessons in pride and superiority. And so, as the night deepened and the stars shimmered across the alien city, both young figures from different worlds continued their journeys. One learned patience, wisdom, and quiet strength. The other began to confront pride, arrogance, and the possibility of humility. The events of the day would shape them both, slowly but surely, preparing them for the challenges, discoveries, and transformations that lay ahead. This was a turning point. The insult had passed, yet its echoes remained. The human had shown restraint and dignity. The young royal had begun to question his assumptions. Both had been changed, and both were beginning to understand that respect. Understanding and patience could be far more powerful than pride, anger, or dominance. And in that quiet, profound way, the story of two worlds, one proud, one patient, continued to unfold, each step moving them closer to a future neither could yet fully imagine. The next morning, the young human woke before dawn, as was his habit. Even in a city that never truly slept, he found a quiet moment to reflect on the past days. The insult from the young alien royal, the silent walk, the exercises, and the meetings had left an impression, not just on him, but on the alien world around him. He understood that his actions, small as they might seem, were shaping perceptions. Respect could be shown without words, and influence could be earned without raising a voice. He dressed simply, in a uniform that was modest and practical. He did not need adornments or decorations. His calm presence was enough. He ate breakfast slowly, savoring the strange alien foods, and watched how the staff moved around him, efficient and respectful. Everything was unfamiliar, yet he felt at ease because he relied on observation, patience, and his own inner confidence. Meanwhile, the young alien royal was restless. He had spent the night replaying the previous day in his mind. The human's calm reactions, his quiet decisions, his ability to influence without dominance, all of it weighed heavily on the royal. He realized that he had underestimated this human. He had been taught that strength came from assertiveness and pride, that respect was demanded through words and lineage. But the human had shown him a different kind of power, one that did not shout, but quietly shaped reality through patience, dignity, and understanding. The royal decided he needed to learn more. He could not admit it aloud, not to his advisors, not even to himself fully, but he wanted to understand the human strength. He began to observe, not to mock or test, but to truly study. Every gesture, every careful movement, every thoughtful response was analyzed. He watched how the human listened before speaking, how he considered each choice carefully, and how he remained composed under pressure. Slowly, the royal began to question the values he had been raised with. That morning, the human was invited to participate in a collaborative project. Alien leaders had designed it to encourage cultural understanding and problem-solving across species. The task involved creating a solution to a complex challenge that required cooperation, intelligence, and creativity. The human entered the room calmly, scanning the environment, noting the tools available, and observing the participants' behavior. He did not rush, he did not boast, he did not try to assert authority. Instead, he listened carefully, asked questions, and offered suggestions only when appropriate. The alien participants were quick, confident, and sometimes impatient. They expected bold moves, sharp commands, and immediate results. The human's approach was different. He considered options slowly, explained his reasoning clearly, and demonstrated patience when others grew frustrated. Gradually, the group began to follow his lead, not because he demanded it, but because his calm approach made sense. Problems that had seemed impossible began to resolve as he guided the team quietly, but effectively. The young royal was present, of course. He tried subtly to challenge the human, to push him into making mistakes, to assert his own authority. But every time he tried, the human adapted gracefully. He did not hesitate, he did not argue, and he did not show frustration. He simply analyzed the situation, chose the best course of action, and moved forward with calm precision. Each success, each quiet victory, deepened the royal's confusion. Pride battled curiosity inside him, leaving him unsettled but increasingly aware that he had much to learn. After the exercise, the human was invited to a discussion with some of the alien elders. They wanted to understand his approach to leadership, problem-solving, and diplomacy. He explained that humans valued patience, dialogue, and empathy. He spoke of how listening carefully and considering different perspectives often led to better solutions than force or aggression. He did not claim superiority, nor did he seek praise. He simply shared his perspective honestly, clearly, and without arrogance. The elders were intrigued. They had expected a human to be defensive, loud, or impulsive. Instead, They found someone composed, thoughtful, and wise beyond his years. They asked questions, tested his ideas, and even challenged his assumptions. The human responded with clarity and patience, never losing his calm. Every response demonstrated not just intelligence, but humility and respect for other cultures. Slowly, the elders began to see that this human represented qualities that could bridge the vast differences between their civilizations. Meanwhile, the young royal could not stop thinking about the human. He replayed every interaction, every subtle gesture, every moment of calm strength. He realized that he had been taught to value dominance and pride above all else. Yet here was someone who had earned respect without either. Slowly, he began to question the lessons of his upbringing. Perhaps strength was not always loud. Perhaps wisdom could be quiet. Perhaps humility could be more powerful than pride. That afternoon, the human took a walk through the floating gardens of the alien city. He observed the way the plants were cared for, the flowing streams, and the creatures that moved gracefully between platforms. Everything seemed designed with attention and respect for life. He reflected on how culture shapes behavior, and how understanding these subtle details could build trust. He wrote notes in his journal, careful not to judge, but to learn and observe. A young royal followed at a distance, unable to resist the urge to study. He noted how the human moved calmly, how he engaged with the environment respectfully, and how he observed every detail without rushing. Every subtle action reinforced what the royal had already begun to understand, that strength and wisdom could be quiet, and that patience often carried more influence than force. For the first time, the royal considered that he might have much to learn, not only about humans, but about himself. By evening, a private meeting was arranged. The human was invited to speak with a group of advisors and scholars about Earth's approach to conflict, collaboration, and diplomacy. He explained how humans valued dialogue over aggression, how understanding and patience often led to better outcomes, and how humility could create alliances that pride alone never could. He answered questions with clarity and honesty, never boasting, never arguing, and always listening carefully before responding. The elders nodded, impressed by his insight. They had never encountered someone so young who carried such patience, understanding, and calm strength. They began to discuss how humans could serve as a model for certain approaches to diplomacy, noting that these qualities might help prevent misunderstandings or conflicts between civilizations. The young royal observed silently, absorbing every detail, his pride slowly yielding to curiosity and reflection. Later that night, the human reflected quietly on the events of the day. He knew that every small action mattered, every choice had impact, and every interaction shaped perceptions. He did not feel triumphant or proud. He felt responsible. He understood that the lessons he had shown, patience, dignity, and calm strength, were more important than any victory or recognition. They could influence not only the young royal, but the entire relationship between their worlds. The young royal, lying awake, could not stop replaying the human's composure and quiet influence. He realized that he had much to learn about respect, humility, and true strength. The arrogance and pride that had shaped his life now seemed incomplete, insufficient to understand the depth of the human's qualities. He felt the stirrings of humility, not weakness, but the beginning of awareness that wisdom and strength could take many forms. And so, as the stars glimmered above the alien city, both young beings, one human, one alien, continued their journeys. One learned patience, clarity, and quiet influence. The other began to question pride, dominance, and the meaning of strength. The insult from the first meeting had passed, but its lessons lingered. The human had demonstrated restraint and dignity, and the young royal had begun the difficult, humbling task of understanding a kind of power he had never known. The events of this day marked another turning point. The human's quiet strength continued to inspire respect and reflection. The young royal's curiosity grew, pushing him toward self-examination and learning. Together, without words or conflict, they were slowly shaping a path toward understanding, humility, and a future neither could yet fully predict. And as the night deepened, the alien city shimmered like a living organism, holding within it the promise of change, the lessons of patience, and the subtle beginnings of a bond between two very different beings, one who had learned to wield calm strength, and one who had begun to learn the value of humility. The sun rose slowly over the alien city, casting gentle light across towers that glimmered like crystals. The human woke early, as usual, but today felt different. He sensed that the events of the past days, the insult, the silent walk, the exercises, the meetings, the quiet influence he had shown, were leading to something important. There was a tension in the air, subtle but real, like the calm before a storm. He did not feel fear or anxiety. He felt focus. He understood that his actions, his patience, and his dignity had created ripples across the alien court, ripples that were about to meet the young royal directly. The young alien royal, too, was awake, pacing in his quarters. His thoughts were restless. The human's quiet strength had unsettled him in ways he could not fully understand. For the first time, he questioned what he had been taught about power, superiority, and respect. He had assumed that authority, pride, and status alone defined strength. But the human had shown him otherwise. The calm dignity, careful reasoning, and patient observation displayed in every interaction challenged everything the royal had ever believed. He felt a mixture of frustration, curiosity, and a strange admiration he could not name. By mid-morning, a gathering was called to discuss the final phase of the cultural exchange. The human entered the hall quietly, observing the room with careful eyes. Aliens from various ranks were present, some curious, some skeptical, and some quietly impressed by what they had seen of the human's behavior. The young royal was there as well, his posture rigid, but his mind alert, struggling with the mix of emotions the human inspired. This meeting would bring the two directly together in a way that could no longer be avoided. The discussion began formally. Alien leaders spoke of collaboration, knowledge sharing, and mutual respect. Humans were asked to present their perspective on diplomacy, negotiation, and understanding. The human listened carefully, observing not only the words spoken, but the subtle gestures, expressions, and tones that accompanied them. He knew that comprehension went beyond language. He understood that perception, patience, and thoughtful action mattered just as much as the message itself. When it was his turn to speak, the human addressed the assembly with calm confidence. He thanked the aliens for their openness and for the chance to learn from their advanced civilization. He spoke about Earth, its challenges, its triumphs, and the lessons humans had learned through cooperation, patience, and perseverance. His voice was steady, not loud, but it carried weight because it was sincere. He did not seek to impress, argue, or assert dominance. He simply spoke truthfully, from a place of understanding and respect. The elders listened intently, some nodding, some exchanging quiet glances. They were impressed by the human's clarity, humility, and composure. This young being, despite his age and limited experience compared to centuries of alien life, demonstrated a type of wisdom and strength that transcended cultures. His presence alone had influenced many around him, and his words reinforced what they had already observed. The young royal, however, was focused entirely on the human. He remembered the insult he had spoken days before, the reaction he had expected, and the silence that had followed. He realized now that he had been wrong to judge the human solely by appearances or demeanor. The quiet strength displayed consistently in thought and action had revealed something far deeper than the royal had ever anticipated. His pride bristled, yet he felt compelled to acknowledge first to himself that the human possessed a kind of power he had never known. After the formal speeches, the elders invited a more personal discussion, a chance for the human and the young royal to interact directly. The human approached calmly, offering a respectful bow. The royal met him halfway, hesitating slightly, unsure how to act. He had expected defiance, anger, or fear. Instead, he encountered dignity, composure, and sincerity. The human spoke gently, without accusation or judgment, expressing a willingness to understand, to learn, and to collaborate. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then the royal, almost unconsciously, asked a question. It was simple, yet profound. He wanted to understand how the human remained so calm, so patient, so unshaken in the face of insult and challenge. The human smiled faintly, a gesture of warmth and humility. He explained that true strength comes not from pride, status, or loudness, but from patience, understanding, and thoughtful action. Words, anger, or dominance could influence some, but lasting respect was earned through dignity, restraint, and empathy. The royal listened, struggling with each word. His upbringing had taught him the opposite, that power was shown through superiority, authority, and command. But now he realized that he had misunderstood what strength could be. The human's silence, composure, and wisdom had demonstrated a force far greater than any boast or insult could. He felt the stirrings of humility, a realization that learning and understanding were forms of strength in themselves. The human then spoke about the responsibility of representation. He explained that as Earth's representative, he was not there to argue, dominate, or prove himself. He was there to listen, to learn, and to show that humans valued cooperation, dialogue, and mutual respect. He emphasized that progress and understanding came from patience, empathy, and careful action. His words were simple, yet their clarity struck the royal deeply. The young royal, for the first time, allowed himself to reflect honestly. He admitted to himself that he had underestimated humans. He admitted that his assumptions about strength, superiority, and respect were incomplete. And he realized that the human had taught him a lesson he could not have learned through pride, authority, or arrogance alone. He had demonstrated that dignity, calmness, and understanding could influence others more profoundly than status or force. After the conversation, the human and the royal walked together through the palace gardens. Floating platforms, glowing plants, and flowing streams surrounded them. For a while, they walked in silence. Words were not needed. The human's presence alone communicated patience, respect, and confidence. The royal observed every gesture, every step, and slowly began to mirror a quieter, more thoughtful approach in his own movements. Over the next hours, they engaged in collaborative activities designed to build understanding. They solved complex problems, navigated cultural exercises, and discussed philosophy, history, and ethics. The human spoke softly, thoughtfully, and respectfully. The royal began to participate without the arrogance that had marked his early interactions. He asked questions, listened attentively, and allowed himself to consider perspectives beyond his own training. The change was subtle, yet profound. By evening, a final ceremony was held to celebrate the cultural exchange. Humans and aliens gathered together to honor the progress made and the relationships formed. The young human was acknowledged for his patience, dignity, and ability to inspire understanding. The royal, standing nearby, felt a mixture of pride, respect, and humility. He had learned that true strength was not measured in status, lineage, or loudness, but in calm confidence, patience, and understanding. During the ceremony, the royal approached the human quietly, offering a gesture of acknowledgement that conveyed respect without words. It was a silent recognition of the lessons learned, the growth experienced, and the bond formed. The human responded with a modest nod, understanding that influence was earned, not claimed. Both understood that this moment was not an end, but a beginning and opening for continued learning, collaboration, and mutual respect. That night, as the stars shimmered above the alien city, both reflected on the journey they had taken. The human considered the lessons he had shown: restraint, patience, dignity, and the power of quiet strength. He understood that every choice, every calm response, and every moment of observation had influenced not just the young royal, but the broader relationship between their worlds. The royal, lying awake, reflected on what he had learned. He realized that pride could blind, status could mislead, and arrogance could isolate. He had begun to understand that true strength could take subtle forms: patience, humility, and the ability to influence without force. He felt gratitude for the human's example, even though he would never admit it openly. In the silence of his thoughts, he recognized a new path for himself, one of curiosity, understanding, and careful reflection. By the time the city's lights dimmed, signaling the end of activity for the night, both young beings had been transformed. The insult, once a moment of tension, had become a catalyst for learning and growth. The human's calm strength had reshaped perceptions. The royal's curiosity and humility had begun to replace arrogance and pride. Together, without words or conflict, they had demonstrated the power of patience, dignity, and mutual respect. And so, the story concluded not with victory or defeat, but with understanding. The young human had shown that influence and respect could be earned quietly, through patience, observation, and thoughtful action. The young royal had learned that true strength was not measured by status or pride, but by humility, empathy, and wisdom. In the end, two worlds had met not in conflict, but in the quiet power of human dignity and the beginning of an alien understanding that would shape the future. The galaxy, unaware, had witnessed a small but significant turning point, the lesson that silence, patience, and dignity could speak louder than any insult or boast.